1.81 ZZ 125 horsepower. The base engine for the Toyota RAV4 is a 1.8-liter 4. It's very similar to older engines. It has a timing drive with a roller chain, one-phase shifter and the absence of hydraulic compensators in the valve drive. In general, nothing seditious can be said about this engine, but there is a risk of encountering oil consumption. In general, this engine was initially prone to consuming lubricant, and this was due to the poor design of the piston rings. Only in 2005 did Toyota engineers optimize the pistons and all their rings, and the problem went away. Earlier engines had to be upgraded with improved pistons. The first owners of Toyota models with this engine could hear the rustling of a stretched timing chain after reaching a mileage of 150,000 kilometers. In general, the timing chain of a 1.8-liter unit is far from eternal. 2.01 OSFE 150 horsepower, 2.42 OSFE 170 horsepower. More often, the RAV4 is found with other 4s engines of 2.0 and 2.4 liters. These are almost identical OZ series engines, and they are very resourceful. They easily last more than 500,000 kilometers. Over 500,000 mileage. Minor oil leaks may periodically bother you, including from the oil pressure sensor. Once every 100,000 kilometers you will need to clean the throttle valve. These engines have a timing chain that can easily last for 300,000 kilometers. And when replacing it, is worth rechecking and, if necessary, adjusting the valve clearances. The clearances are time-consuming and expensive to adjust by selecting pushers. If you don't skimp on oil, the only phase shifter will last a long time. We definitely note that you need to monitor the condition of the radiator and change the antifreeze every 3 to 4 years and install a high-quality pump. In general, do not allow this motor to overheat. In fact, cooling problems can cause the cylinder head to deform. In general, these gasoline engines require only oil and spark plug changes over hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Let us recall that at the dawn of their youth, OZ series engines often raised the cylinder head due to the insufficient length of the thread in the block for the cylinder head mounting bolts. The thread simply pulled out. This happened against the backdrop of overheating of the engine. This design flaw was resolved during the operation of Toyota vehicles, including the RAV4 model. 2.0 D4 CD FTV 116 horsepower. Turbodiesel Toyota RAV4s are rare. Under the hood they have an engine of their own design with a timing belt drive and a common rail fuel system from Denso. This engine is reliable, but maintainability and availability of spare parts for the fuel system are very annoying and deterred by the price. Toyota RAV4 transmissions are good. In terms of mechanics, no questions arise at all. With the old 4-Street with an automatic U140, you shouldn't expect problems even with a mileage of more than 300,000 kilometers. But subject to regular oil and filter changes, which can be reached after removing the pan. In general, the torque of the engines of this crossover, and its weight, are not able to reduce the life of this durable Japanese automatic transmission. In its youth, this transmission had problems with the electronic control unit, but they were successfully solved by soldering weak connections. Toyota RAV4 brake calipers are prone to jamming due to souring of the guides. This usually results in uneven pad wear and uneven braking force. This problem is solved in workshops that overhaul and restore brake calipers. At the same time, you need to pay attention to the brake pipes and hoses. They are at risk of corrosion and drying out. In all-wheel drive versions of the RAV4, this same all-wheel drive does not have any clutches. All-wheel drive is permanent based on a free center differential. There are no particular weak points here. The engines of this crossover simply do not have enough strength to turn anything in the transmission. With age and mileage, the driveshaft outboard bearing can only hum. However, over time, oil leaks may appear along the transfer case seals. All seals are available separately, but to remove the transfer case you will have to remove the front subframe. The original bearing will cost $100. There are a lot of substitutes for all consumable chassis parts for the RAV4. CV joints, both front and rear, fail due to damage to their boots and subsequent penetration of moisture and dirt inside. And it's better not to allow this, because original CV joints are estimated at $400, non-original ones are 4 to 5 times cheaper. Original wheel bearings last 170,000 to 200,000 kilometers. They say that their service life is noticeably reduced due to off-road driving, and they do not withstand side impacts very well. Original front wheel bearings will cost $55. There are no miracles in the RAV4 suspension, everything is simple. The front control arm ball joints are sold and replaced separately. The part will cost $55. Original silent blocks for the front levers are not for sale. The assembled lever will cost $240. Non-original silent blocks cost very little money. Original front stabilizer links can be purchased for $24. The rear suspension has 2 wishbones for each wheel and 1 longitudinal link. The rear suspension lasts so long that when it needs to be refreshed, all the mounting bolts become tightly stuck. The trailing arm bushing is sold separately for $40. All others in the original are available complete with levers. Transverse ones will cost from $40 to $140. Body problems are the most expensive problems you can encounter. If the owners of these crossovers did not take care of anti-corrosion protection at least at the turn of 2010, then the bottom, sills, and subframes will look sad. Today, there are often cases where the fuel tank rusts through. Moreover, it usually rusts right on top. You can inspect its top from the interior, through the hatch for access to the fuel pump. External body panels do not rust for a surprisingly long time, but serious pockets of corrosion appear on the wheel arches and from under all the moldings. Remember how in the 2000s all crossover fans rejoiced at the plastic moldings on the wheel arches? This is no protection. Scratches on this plastic still need to be painted. What's even worse is that the holes in the body metal for attaching these same moldings eventually wear the paint down to the metal. Add to this all the moisture and sand that gets under the moldings, and we get ideal conditions for the development of corrosion. By the way, frequent off-road use usually leaves characteristic marks on the body of these cars, abrasions and outright dents both on the bottom and on the outside of the body, if the owner did not take care of his crossover. All these wounds actively rust, especially in the area of welds. Inspection of the body for corrosion should continue in the interior and under the hood. It is worth looking under the floor covering and getting to the metal. It often happens that the bottom there has turned into a sieve. This occurs due to water getting into the carpet. Water flows through the seals of the harnesses passing through the engine shield. On cars with a sunroof, over time, the drainage of this very hatch pleases with waterfalls. There are also cases when the layer of glue under the windshield breaks. Then water drips directly from the ceiling. After opening the hood, you need to inspect the cups and supports of the front shock absorbers. Corrosion on them is just the tip of the iceberg. Rust breaks out from the inside. When the inner surface of the arches and glasses has long been turning into dust, the rear door of the RAV4 is a hinge generation. On quite a few cars it rattles when driving due to sagging hinges. And the hinges themselves readily rust and hint that it's time to change them. In general, the RAV4 body, which is almost killed by rust, is the main problem of this crossover. Everything else can be dealt with. Today, RAV4s are not very often seen on the road or for sale. However, it is surprising that many of their owners do not suffer from frequent breakdowns and repairs of these crossovers, and do not seek to exchange them for something fresher. Now we will figure out why this happens. The RAV4's interior is a realm of hard plastic and 100% functionality. The problems here are purely age-related. The plastic and the paint on the plastic were often places of constant contact with the driver's limbs. It is worth checking the functionality of all electrical systems, from the keys on the power window unit to the heater. It's not so rare that the block with the power window buttons on the driver's door simply falls out due to the breakdown of its fastenings. The interior heating intensity may be very weak if the radiator is clogged. The door's electrical components may not work due to a simple break in the wiring harness at a bend in the doorway. Door hinges tend to wear out, after which the doors become warped both in the open and closed positions and even begin to rattle when driving due to the misalignment. Today, RAV4s are not very often seen on the road or for sale. However, it is surprising that many of their owners do not suffer from frequent breakdowns and repairs of these crossovers, and do not seek to exchange them for something fresher. Now we will figure out why this happens. The battery on the Toyota RAV4 is small and Japanese. It has a compact body and reverse polarity. The capacity of such batteries varies from 55 to 70 Ah. An old unmaintained battery is most often the reason why a reliable Japanese crossover does not start when the first cold weather sets in. Note that the battery under the hood is installed in such a way that car thieves manage to get to it and cut the negative wire in order to eliminate the anti-theft alarm.